modern explorer previously achieved. Here I am, River. I've come to calm you down. You're going too fast. You're too high. I dream of escaping. Gracious, what man is going to look at you in such a state? I expect you to be properly attired. I raised you to raise us all in the world's esteem. And I maintain the standards my mother set throughout our travels well. Together we measure, we carefully note the geography, and we bring back the information to the ground directly for the greater glory of empire. My imperative is to establish the camp as home base so we don't go entirely. Henson, my tea, please. Special herbal medicine, you serve. What did you say it was? The mud, the gore, the guns, the cold, the altitude, the attitude of the natives, here 1 minute, gone the next, constantly striking camp, and those horrid animal heads everywhere. How they stink. Our servants have to lug them from one camp to the next, from mountain to plain and back again. As we can be in this London, we have burnt stumps to create a wooden town. We maintain our station no matter what. When your beloved father died last year, you know his pension died with him. We will keep up appearances and marry you all well off. Yes, Mother, I've gone so high, so far beyond what was determined for me. You realize how I want to dance me away.
Thank you very much. I'll talk more about what that was in a little bit, but first we have Irene Mathyssen, our MP, here to introduce Penn.
Thank you so much. Good evening to everyone. It is wonderful to see so many friends and, of course, Penn's faithful fans. I wish to acknowledge that we stand on the traditional territory of the Anawandran neutral peoples who once settled this region alongside the Algonquin, Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and the Lenni Lenape peoples. As settlers, we are grateful to those who cared for and honored this land, the waters and all creatures, trees and plants that thrived here. Now, it's a great privilege to be invited here among such brilliant creative artists. You have to remember that I spend a lot of time surrounded by fellow politicians. It's also a great privilege to introduce my dear friend, Penn Kemp. Poet, performer, and playwright, Penn Kemp has been celebrated as a trailblazer since her first publication of poetry by Coach House, 1972, and as a one-woman literary industry. She was London's inaugural poet laureate and West Western's Writer-in-Residence, as well as the League of Canadian Poets Spoken Word Artist of the Year. Penn has been a keen participant in Canada and London's cultural life with 30 books of poetry, prose, and drama, as well as CDs of her sound operas. New plays about local heroes celebrate exceptional Londoners, heroes in the arts, as well as Victorian explorer Theresa Harris, raised in Eldon House and known as an adventurous young woman who ignored her social station and the conventions of her day to become one of the greatest explorers of her time. The works also include political poetry, I've seen some of that, entitled Barbaric Cultural Practice, and I concur. As always, Penn works with wonderful collaborators like videographer Dennis Siren and community-engaged learning students from Western University. Art director Mary MacDonald has created a montage of sound and visual animation juxtaposed with text from poems from local heroes, along with augmented reality markers linked to local heroes. London and Londoners are truly blessed by the accomplishment of local artists who willingly share their vision and experiences and incredible talent. Welcome and enjoy the evening. And here's our favorite Penn Kemp.
As far as I know, I'm the only Penn Kemp. That takes some doing. Thank you, Irene. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Mary, for that amazing animation, which I hadn't seen before. It has so many reverberations. Irene already thanked one of my favorite collaborators, Dennis Siren, who you'll see work from in... this is my husband, Gavin. It was his birthday yesterday, and we spent the afternoon learning a new cell phone. So when I take off for Victoria at 6:35 in the morning, I will be able to receive, not on the plane, but I will now be one with you. And he is my own personal local hero. Watch him blush. So I really thank Eldon House for all their excited support of my work with Theresa Harris. It began with a processional play through Eldon House, using the Himalayas as staircase, or the staircase as Himalayas. And we could only bring in 20 people at a time, but it was extraordinary because the house itself is such a character. And we, with Mary Ashton and Panagiotis Giannarapis, they performed it in costume, in situ. And we did it again as with me as Theresa on March 4th, and I chose that date specifically as the calendar's only directive. And I actually, when you buy this book, you will see that the preface is signed on March 4th, which was a lie. It was earlier, but I had to use the March 4th. And on that note, please vote NDP in June. A political announcement. Really, I could go on. Theresa, Eldon House did an amazing, the fonts, the Theresa Harris and Harris fonts are at the Western Archives. And when I was first writer-in-residence, John Lutman took me around the archives, and I got fascinated by Theresa Harris's hair and the whole idea of jumping out of colonial London in 1850, 1860, to explore, to get married, which is what you did and what I did a century later at around the same age, 21. And she just took off around the world and had the most amazing life, doing spying for the Great Game, for the Empire. And I have a theory that I'll share with you, of course. And the theory was that John and Amelia, her mother and father, were surveyors of the Great Lakes. And they had 12 children. I don't know how they fit them into Eldon House, but they did. Amelia and Teresa slept together until the day she was married, after John, her husband, died. So she went from her mother's bed to her husband's bed, and from then on to a second husband's bed, with all dutiful protocol being observed. We know what to do in London, Ontario. Oh, there are advantages, really there are. You can do so much more if you do it sweetly. So I'm going to begin, because I was so inspired with Local Heroes, with a couple of lines, a couple of poems from sort of distaff poems that were rejects as drama, but they had to explore Teresa even more than they did in two plays. They did two plays. One was The Dream Life, which was a processional around Eldon House, and the third was put on last March at the Palace Theatre with how many, Maureen, how many actors? 16 actors. So, and that was a week run that was sold out. It was so much fun. So why Teresa Harris? Teresa escaped the bounds of a single poem, demanding that her story be heard as drama. But it's in poetry that I can develop the whole era and its complexity. Teresa Harris grew up the youngest of 12 brothers and sisters who delighted in telling her what to do and how to behave properly. Teresa's escape was into nature, outside of prying eyes, and in itself a source of inspiration as well as of danger. Forests rounded their property at the forks of the Thames, called the Eskinsipi, meaning antlered river, for Odawa and Ojibwa inhabitants. Along with the neutrals, they have been here since before the Europeans arrived. In 1793, Lieutenant Governor John Graves Simcoe named it the Thames after the original English. Like so many place names and customs here, Little London took its cue from English origins, replacing native names and peoples. And so the story opens, the story goes round the world. How does a strong woman like Teresa Harris escape the confines of colonial London and become one of the great explorers of her time? What conditioning does she carry with her about class and culture? History, till recently, has not been fair to women, often excluding their accomplishments. Teresa's is a story of growing up hampered by domestic constraints, escaping, and yet convention still binds her. Are we too repeating patterns that we don't recognize? How are we affected by cultural restraint, the environment in which we grew? These questions are still relevant to our own time and place. Have we learned about cultural difference? How does travel change us? What's it like to come back to live in a place like London? For me, such questions hit home. Teresa demanded to be heard. Just as I complete this piece, she burst into another dimension. I dream I'm on Eldon House lawn, offering a presentation about Teresa to a large milling crowd. And in my opening remarks, I asked the audience to imagine themselves as a small girl dressed in a pinafore, playing in this gorgeous garden, on a summer day just like this. Aren't we fortunate to be in such a glorious setting when my play can be realized so vividly, traveling through time? And on July 22nd, I know you'll all note this in your notebook and your mental calendar. On July 22nd, for Elven House Tea, I hope we will be launching the CD of The Dream Life of Teresa Harris, with Mary, I hope, playing, this is the whole part, at the event, and Mary Ashton and Pediotis Giannarapis are performing after the performance on March 4th last year, and that was recorded by Mary, who is the most indomitable. She came through flu, she came through time pressure, she was working on it. She makes me like a very relaxed person in comparison. And the other people I wanted to talk about today are some of the artists. I grew up in London, fled at 21, like Teresa, as far as I could, and came back at 60-something, and am totally happy to be here. I don't know what changed in 40 years. I guess it must have been me. But I grew up in an artistic household. You have to come and have tea with me and see all my dad's paintings. And I'm thrilled to say that Cassandra, Cassie, and Brian, Meehan, took 5 of the paintings by Dad from the collection, from the museum collection. These are paintings I haven't seen for 30 years, so it was a great treat to see them. One was a maritime life, and Dad would paint in terms of sequences. So I have, for example, in our living room, our one of the maritime life ones that you'll see out there as part of the series, and in our hall, it was Shelley Siskin who told me to see, to put the picture that you love best on the door outside your bedroom window, so when you wake up in the middle of the night or in the morning, that's the first thing you see. So I did that with one painting and with another, which is the equivalent of, though it's a little bit better, of the moth painting, which is one of my favorites. It's very magical. Dad had a heart attack at age 40, so he was sort of incapacitated. He was not only an artist, very much involved in setting up the Art League in London, working with Claire West and Selwyn Dewdney and Herbaris. And there wasn't much art going on in the 40s and 30s when he moved here. He was away for the war until 46, but then they kept on painting abstracts, and as Nancy Poole said, there's very little abstract painting done in London at that time. In fact, he was publicity and advertising executive at the London Life, which killed him. But he also was stoned by buns and buttered buns during the cafeteria lunch hour. I don't know how he handled that. I can't quite imagine how he did. But he called himself Jasper Quackenbush, and he was really torn between those two divides, the great monolith of London life and the really burgeoning, fascinating cultural community. So I'm going to, I promised a certain person from Mykonos that I would do a sound poem. This is When the Heart Parts. And it was done, the whole thing about this section of the book was done as a sound opera, which is something I love doing, because obviously I love collaborating with wonderful people, because if they're so, what, as in with Mary, or later you'll see with Dennis or with Mary Ashton, the invention is just so amazing. So to see the words lifted off into animation or into sound is such a thrill. So I'll give you my own sound part. When the heart parts. I was saying to somebody that I was reading a sound poem or performing a sound poem, at a university, not Western, of course, but the students had bought all the books and were carrying along, reading alongside, and at the end, they corrected me. When the heart parts. I wanted to refer to some of the paintings there. One of them, this section is me coming home from up north where I was living, and I'd heard word that Dad had a major heart attack, was in University Hospital. We lived just north of University Hospital, so we were back and forth over that bridge countless times. And this describes one of the paintings that still hang in my house. So really, you must come for tea. Knock, knock. Nobody home. I know where the key is hidden and let myself into the soft, dark air of the familiar living room. The house will wait with me till my mother and brother return from the hospital, till they walk home with their news. On the walls, Dad's pictures wait, prescient as dreams. His women, somberly painted in deep crimson oil, lower their hooded eyes. His images bear the imprint of the lady, or her emblem, shell or moth. I wander the house, its still life. Pan in cadmium red plays wild pipes, chanting for change. Hooded figures swirl and cluster, crowded under night's brood. Circus troops gather by the barren plain in the living room. Out in the studio, Dad's latest, last watercolors blast through all color into restless, pure light realms. Glorious textured light, pure gift of folly. Soft acrylics trace the lines of my mother's spine, the fold of her cheek. In the basement of early wartime paintings, white walls of fear break the perilous silence before vows. Behind this shroud stands the white goddess. She is the pure fear Dad felt when a buzz bomb caught him on an English street against a white wall,
just before my birth, counting the 10, 9, 8 dangerous seconds before the bomb exploded. He knew her presence. There was no escape. That terror lit the walls of my mother's womb. That presence stayed with him through the Navy years he spent detonating bombs. The peacetime he spent bashing against the monolithic walls of London Life Insurance. The bomb did not go off until Dad hit 40, when his heart exploded in what the doctor called coronary thrombosis, coronary infarction. Pan in cadmium red chants for comfort. Humming along with the kettle, I boil water and set out our favorite teacups. The front door opens. One of the lovely people who would come and visit and talk philosophy and existentialism in Dad's studio was Greg Curnow, and this is a poem for him. Traveling Lights. After there'll be no more, odd characters invade the painting. Lurching out of Motherlode, they slide off smooth banks to the open pond white paper makes, cavorting seal slick in breakers between home and old. Scrolled letters sparkle currents of glyph. Fantasy floats in layered brightness, breathing bands in and out, and then not. The traveling light of attention shines on disparate objects lit by his restless, roaming curiosity, even after his own bike reflector is put out. Polished obsessions unravel on shelves for whoever is there where he was. Greg would be over 80 now. Imagine him still holding forth, holding on, staying put. Eccentric, Greg created his own center devoted to place, his place. The wheels of his bike are still spinning orange and complementary, blue onto the page, the pavement, and pigment on canvas, vivid as his tattered sweater, his legacy, our heritage in old deeds, and stuff whose singularity he chose to honor and display as serious games of play, series whose choices make room for us to see, hear. What remains is the reach from pen to paper to record the procession of cyclists. Greg riding herd along a field flooded in light, gray barn rising from the mist, and mesmerizing the driver who followed the illusion of art turned against itself. Convinced of no louder verge beyond shaping the dark space where sound stops hollow and is not yet silence ringing back. The middle section is dedicated to a trio of Rainies, Colleen and James. And one of the reasons this book happened was that Barbara Taylor at the London Free Press commissioned me to write a poem for James on his retirement So that, and along with community-engaged learning students. Unfortunately, it is on my website and it's on Facebook and everywhere, but we couldn't show it today. We couldn't download it from the computer. So they did an amazing promo film for this evening. And I've worked with Menina Jones at her local Heroes course. And what they do is they send out, they match students and people like me or you, and then you get to work with these kids, all that fresh young blood, you know, so good, so fun. And because of the London Arts Council, I was given a CAPE grant, which meant that this book came into existence. And thanks to Mike O'Connor, he took a risk on it because the turnaround time was amazingly short to be here tonight. So that's all by way of saying that this poem is dedicated to Jamie Rainey. Drawing in miniatures. Born Virgo in fire tiger year, this mild rebel, daring, shy, ripped new into bold print. Regional, he reached out, round the globe from here, heard susurrating. Jumping form, to fit the vision, he started alphabet and candlelit, lit up. Local gone wild. Not stayed, but a Canadian poet must stay in the country and act as if he weren't in it. End of quote. Jamie's art continues to fly high and wide, a flash of orange, that tiger burning in the wings. His son suggested for a headstone a killdeer. That high-pitched cry and faint broken wing lead us from the nest in meadow toward day's eye, toward the sun. Beyond good and bad, I hear him say on CBC, beyond here. Though he returned here to beloved Sowesto, to the fields and his Perth County farmhouse. And Jamie himself, with the angels, if you believe, in the wings, if you do not. And if you do, still fiercely, in the wings. Oh man, I'm really not into television, despite the DVDs I watch, but I'm just addicted to Virtue and Moyer. Their grace, that they come from Ilderton, and they're still such lovely people. I think they must be romantically interconnected, even though they last words age 79. So this is a poem dedicated to them. Mirror. You don't know who? Somebody said they don't know who I'm talking about? That could be. No. As you were. Mirror neurons. As if you were leaping in the air with Virtue and Moyer. As if you are running perfect simulation. Lift and fly. Figures are skating, whirling to wild quads like Sufis dancing in dervish reverence. Perfection swirls along an unseen slip of water that allows for glide. Ice 2 inches thick, blades glint. Fantasy hovers, floats flawlessly, describing meticulous arcs on ice, in air. Geometry touched by magic, projections spun on glass surface. Le Petit Prince and his rose crisscross the ice to mirror our neurons effortlessly after ruthless practice. One haptic system rings in tune with the other, not by happenstance, but by exquisite design, creating the perfect illusion of romance. This pair knows their true trick is always in landing home. Oh, I guess I have to read a poem for Alice Munro. There are 3 of them in the book, and they're from another manuscript called Dream Sequence, so they're dreaming of Alice. Goldilocks meets Alice in Huron County. Rounding the yard at the end of the lane, looking for Alice Munro's old home, I knock on the first door. This house is much too classically fancy to be hers. The next cottage is too run down. The third home is just right. So I open the door and walk in. Frail Alice greets me, seated, eager for any excuse to dismiss the nurse at her side who is inquiring about symptoms of spreading cancer. I'll chat with you in a moment, Alice sings out. Around her is a gray circle of regulars waiting for their meeting to begin. The leader, a middle-aged minister, betrays but little impatience. As the ladies distribute potluck, Alice asks that I be included. We turn away no one in need, the minister replies haughtily, regarding my girth. I'm in no danger of starving, I respond, laughing. One by one, the folks check in with stories of countering devastating depression. I look around and wonder at the upright citizens of a small Sowesto town, whose truths Alice has been dealing for decades. The forebears of her tales, the writer's source, her fare and sustenance, and now their claim to pride. 2 things we know: the desolation of solace, 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 solace impermanence, and its consolation, interdependent. Soul is solace, soul is solace, soul is soul, soul is the constant sound, soul is constant, soul is the constant sound between desolation and consolation and equanimity. Soul solves nothing, that solves nothing, but holds on to its own, hold on to its own constellation. Old words console the soul with kindness for their own kind, like sky and sigh, scry and rye, cry and when, why? When the family arrives, Mom is nearly ready. I don't think I've been too demanding. I just don't want to do the dishes. I'm up and down like a nothing. Why am I so tired? It's silly. What? What amazes this? What amaze means the rest is past. We're going to have this nice, tiny little private funeral, and you grandchildren can all come. What a maze is this? What a maze means is this? What a maze is this? Somewhat amazed is this? What a maze is this? Means something to her. This means something to the love she claims as solace, so blessed.
My boy is saying he wants to visit London, so keep someone alive down there. Nanny, I can visit her. Kids are that brash. They don't have any concept of life. They're completely selfish. Just what you need, some little gaffer to care for.
What a maze this means. This means something to her. So bless the love I claim as solace.
A heart attack seems like something jumps in your heart. Why did he have to die, Nanny?
I don't know. You just spent too much energy at work. When you get older, like Nobelati and me, you are going to die, and you're going to be ready for it then. The line of your wry grin does not break. Ends fling you into pleased grace. It is now we part. That ends the middle section of Local Heroes. And, well, the solace is that Mary McDonald is going to jump to her feet. She is our art, look, see? It all happened. Our art director who's done that amazing animation you saw, and also she's done, she'll explain, augmented reality, and the first augmented reality ever in London, Ontario, and perhaps Canada, perhaps. Jane Savvy. Because we will have a Q&A.
So for all those leaving, I'll sign your books on the way out.
I just wanted to talk quickly about on the table there beside where Penn will be signing, you can see 3 photo art images, and those are part of the augmented reality, which is not the first in Canada, but I think they're first in London. It will be launched at Eldon House on July 22nd. You get to have a sneak preview here. So throughout Eldon House, there will be these images that are photo art that I've created. On each image there will be a little QR code. You scan that with your camera on your smartphone, should you have one, and a little link will pop up, and that link will take you to whatever media online is linked to that image. So for instance, the first introductory one that has a little red QR code that says scan me, that links to the animation that you saw here earlier tonight, and the other 2 link to other kinds of media. And they will be distributed throughout Eldon House to augment your experience there. Augmented reality means to add to your experience. So as you're in the museum or in Eldon House, you're already engaged in an imaginative adventure of your own, imagining what it must have been like to live in these times in this place. And Penn and I have invited you through the QR codes on the photo images to come along on our imaginative journey and augment the reality of Eldon House by linking directly into our imaginative explorations. And that brings me to the joy that both Dennis and I asked Dennis what he would like me to say for his videos, which are about to show. And he said the same thing that was in my mind, that it's so wonderful to collaborate with Penn because, I think I'm going to try to quote one of your lines, more room to see here. Did I get that right? I think so. Penn's wonderful to collaborate with because she lets you do whatever, be as creative and as wonderful as you like to try to be.
Wouldn't you?
She says, here's my material, have fun and play. And so I did with my animation, and next you're going to see 3 videos that Dennis Siren created. Dennis is at the back. And these are all what you call video poems based on Penn's work. And when you go out to the tables where the book signing is, please do try the QR codes of the augmented reality. It's kind of fun.
So are there any questions?
Thank you.
If there are any technical questions, do not ask me. Any comments or questions? I had some plans, but they left.
Okay. Are there any questions, or should we go with Oh, we have a question.
Yes.
Tom?
Can you talk about the cover of the book?
Oh, of course. I'm always working, as a poet, I'm always working on 6 levels of ambiguity at once. So, Local Heroes has this, I don't think I need it, but yeah. Local Heroes has the cover of our local hero, Teresa Harris, but here she is in 1870. She's dressed in the crinoline of the time, and over top is it's not a jalaba, but it's an Arab cloak. So it's so symbolic as a representation of colonialism, taking on the trappings of local culture, but understanding not as much as one would hope. Because what you really need to look at is the pairing of her pride and arrogance. I love Teresa Harris and I sympathize and identify with her. And I also love camels. And the camel has an equally arrogant sneer on her face. And compare and contrast, I was once a high school teacher, compare and contrast in 300 words or less, the scowl on the driver's face. Just an astonishing juxtaposition. So the cover is in the Western Archives Harris Fawns, and they kindly gave me permission to print it because it just symbolizes so much of London, Ontario's, the palimpsest of, for example, London, England names on top of native territory and so on. We're becoming conscious of all that now. But boy, growing up 100 years after Teresa was raised in Alton House, it wasn't that much different. It really wasn't. It was such a white bread community when I grew up. It's getting better, getting more diverse, inclusive, but it takes a lot to broaden our consciousness to realize what's happening just by that picture, in that picture. I think it says a lot. Did that answer your question, Tom?
Sure did. Thank you.
Anything else? I do answer questions.
So we have 3 videos by Dennis Siren.
On the other hand of time, eternity waits, patient bombs down on the other hand of time. Newt, as night sky spreads over the world, fingers stretched to the horizon, encompassing the globe.
Does Newt hold the world together?
Well, imagine toes stretched to horizon, hands flat on the far disk, earth reversed, black to sky as curved dome, a desert petal inverted. Splayed hand to heel, every night her water bursts to birth the sun of this dry land. From the cave of Newt's womb the word appears ready for syntax.
Beneath us, the world spins dizzy from constant returns.
Rivers of words pour from Newt's breast, translate into deities.
Stars arise,
Stars arise,
light as she wheels,
light as she wheels,
necessity round
necessity round
and round.
and round.
Stars arise,
Stars arise,
light as she wheels,
light as she wheels,
necessity round
necessity round
and round.
and round and round. Our two galaxies collide over and under and never come out on the other
Under.
side ever again.
Dream sequence. The dream life of Teresa Harris, born 1839, Eldon House, London.
You wonder what prepared me. You know I am a gatherer, and gatherers often wander far from home, especially if they are last, the youngest of 12. All these brothers and sisters doubled up behind me.
Always older.
No wonder I had to run all the way around the world to escape their constraint.
We were forever first up the hill and fastest to hide away. We made the rules.
I was eternally seeking them out across creaking floorboards. Sure giveaways. Those secret places were mine, ones they'd never fit. I could squirm under oak bureaus, sneak behind the wardrobe, tuck between draped bronze lion claws. Growing up in such an upright house, I could never catch on.
To proper routine instilled by successions of nannies.
I dreamed of escaping provincial mores, out from under my mother's petticoats, away.
From brothers' taunts, sisters, impossible glamour, the corset's apparel.
I'd never grow into, whatever my age. I too would be married.
Into the ritual of household management, the daily round of what to wear, what to eat, and who is up to snuff.
For this life, I am groomed.
Sisters dream of gentlemen callers to whisk them into a comfortable future.
I dread such confinement of finery, hindered by lace nicety, boxed in by a picnic hamper.
We are as high as we can be in this London.
We have burned stumps to create a wooden town. We live at the forks of Antler River, nowhere to turn but out and away. Escape into the wonderful wild somehow. I read Dreaming Mountain. I wander into the woods, already exploring, discovering land new to me in clearings, in shifting currents of the Thames.
when the company Penn, when the company part from the, when the company part from the, when the company part from the heart, when the company part company from the hearth, when the company part company from the hearth, the art does not stop. Hello, 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 hover, hover, over, she is in, over her head. Hello, 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 hello. All this time, the work you carried, the work you cared for, paired and parried for what? The light you led is now your own. The life you led is now your own. The line that holds you in holds out. The line that held you in holds out. The life you led is now your own. The life, the line, the life that held you in leads out. Your eyes are going, your ears are going, your eyes are gone, your eyes are going over everything, your ears are going all the better to remember, remember everything. Leaving is best left to the end when nothing's left. Two things we know: the desolation of soulless, 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 soulless. The desolation of impermanence and its consolation, independence, soul. Soulless. Soul is the constant sound between desolation and consolation, an equanimity that solves nothing but holds on to its own, holds on to its own consolation. Old words console the soul with kindness for their own kind, like sky and high, scry and sigh, cry and when, what, why, What a maze is this? What a maze is this? What a maze is, what a maze is this? What a maze is this? This means something to her. This means something to her as solace she claims no less. The lie, you lie. The line of your wry grin does not break. Ends fling you into pleased grace. It is then we part. What a maze is this? What a maze is this? Means something to her, no less, so less the love she claims as solace. We cannot know until we are dead. And when we are dead, we cannot speak, so the rest can know. Rest, and the rest is easy. There's no getting around it. The gift you left, the gift of belief you left. The rest us together to peace is peace, is peace, is ease, is peace, is ease, is peace, is each, is what peace? Whose peace? Now peace here, peace, this peace. Now peace, the ends you left others to tie. Wow. When the company part from the heart, when the company part company from the heart. What the day at a day, what the day past at a day, future at a day, future at a day, future. When the day begins, when the company part. Roll on, waving navy, all art does not stop. It is possible to be that large, embrace the whole green planet. The time is come. It is not just possible, it is necessary.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Museum London. Thank you, Mary, our art director. Thank you. See you. Okay.